I'd like to thank the Academy of Economic Studies and for this opportunity, and most particularly Professora Claudia Ţuclea for the opportunity to talk to you today. There is a saying that goes, a person who can speak 3 languages you call trilingual. A person who can speak 2 languages you call bilingual. And a person who speaks 1 language you call an American. Sunt Americano. And so I hope you will forgive me if I read this speech in the language of Shakespeare, if not exactly in the style or quality of Shakespeare. It is evident that neither capitalism nor socialism have worked as their founders intended. Indeed, it is true that they have not worked at all. Socialism ended 20 years ago. This is well known. What is less well known is the fact that capitalism collapsed in 1929. The East has looked towards the West as a model of capitalism. But in fact, no one in the West is old enough to have remembered such a system. What we have in the West is best described as a combination of large states and large businesses. A system which has the virtues of neither, but is rather, in a wonderful phrase I heard just yesterday, a harmonious blend of the vices of both. The system has now internationalized itself, making the very independent existence of small nations and small businesses difficult or even impossible. This odd combination of statism, corporate power, and globalism has left the businessman with a set of confusing ideologies, masking itself as a unified economic dogma. Does the economic science one learns today really provide the businessman or the businesswoman with a set of tools that he or she can use to understand and direct his or her work? More importantly, does it give the person in the business world a way of understanding himself and his role in the world? I believe that there is a choice which faces the business person and the business student. He or she can be a bureaucrat or an entrepreneur. If he or she chooses to be a bureaucrat, then one will only have a technical obligation to make a given system function as well as can be expected given the particular circumstances of that particular system. This choice is, in fact, the only one open to most people in the corporate structure of the globalist economy. Currently, most of the economic power and jobs are in these public or private bureaucracies. This choice is the easiest choice. After all, the jobs and the goals are already designed, the starting salaries are known, and the risks are small compared to the second choice. Now, distributism, which I will talk about in a moment, hates this bureaucracy, or at least it hates it when it becomes the organizing principle of business, society, and the political order. It is more interested in the second choice, because the major principle of distributism is that both an economy and a nation work better when most men are entrepreneurs. The second choice is therefore more interesting to distributists. But this choice involves a further choice. Does one become an entrepreneur out of motives of pure commerce? Or does one see commerce as a part, indeed a precondition for true citizenship? Distributism is not opposed to the idea of business as pure commerce, as just a way to make money. But we do believe that those who make this choice are throwing away not only the greater social values, but the greater business values as well. Hence, it is this connection between commerce and citizenship that I wish to explore through the lens of distributism. A brief word on what distributism is. It is simply this: the idea that both economic and social orders work best when most men are entrepreneurs, and this requires that most men be owners of some form of productive property, such as land, tools, education, access to reasonably priced capital, etc. Capitalism, on the other hand, I will define as the implicit belief that capital should be gathered in a very few hands, either in the hands of state bureaucrats, as in socialism, or in a few private hands, aided and abetted by the state, as in the case of corporate and global capitalism. But in either case, great accumulations of capital are thought to be required by great nations. These great accumulations of capital are best gathered by controlling the price of labor, so that there is a sufficient surplus to provide the great capitals and provide them to only a few hands involved in the production process. So, perhaps the state will control the price of labor, or perhaps the corporation will outsource the work to control the price, on the theory that there is always someone, somewhere, willing to work for less. But, in some way, and in either system, the price of labor must allow for the concentration of capital. Labor, on the other hand, is a cost to be controlled as strictly as possible, or indeed, to be eliminated entirely whenever possible. However, labor is not only a cost of business, it is the source of business. It is the major source of demand. To allow capital to accumulate in a few hands means that there must always be a chronic shortage of demand. As G.K. Chesterton put it, capitalism is contradictory whenever it is complete, for the master is always attempting to cut down what his servant demands, and in doing so is cutting down what his customer can spend. It is asking the same man to act in contradictory ways. It wishes to pay him as a pauper, but expects him to spend like a prince. This contradiction is directly tied to the growth of government. Many will be surprised, I think, by the claim that capitalism disappeared in 1929. Yet, this is a fact beyond reasonable dispute. Capitalism, as an ideology, requires only a small government with limited powers. But such governments ended in the Great Depression. Before that time, the budget of the United States government would consume 3 or 4% of the gross domestic product. But after the Depression, it consumed between 18 and 24%, and sometimes as much as 42% of the GDP. This is not limited government. Why this growth of government? Everybody complains about it, but nobody asks why. Why has every regime, whether of the right or the left, whether